Are little sins okay? You know, really tiny sins that no one will know about and doesn't affect anyone else? What's the harm? As Catholics, we know sin is what separates us from God, so we are to avoid sin at all costs, but I think it's part of our human nature to rationalize and think, well, this is such a little sin, like what's the harm? It's not going to hurt anybody. But we know from Genesis chapter 6 that sin causes grief in the heart of God. Also, we know from 1 Corinthians chapter 12 that when we sin, we hurt the body of Christ because we are all one body. Christ is the head and we are part of the body. And this mystical body is hard for us. I don't think a human can fully understand it on this side of heaven, but we can sort of understand it. You know, if someone has unresolved, unhealthy anger, that anger not only hurts themselves, but it also hurts everyone else in their life, their family, friends, coworkers, neighbors. So we can begin to understand how our tiny sins can hurt the body of Christ. Our actions affect the body of Christ. Also, I recently posted about Our Lady of Fatima, and the children of Fatima, they really understood that we need to avoid all sin, no matter how small. I know when Francisco, before he died, he knew he was going soon, he asked Jacinta and Lucia, have I done any sins? Please tell me, no matter how small. He wanted to confess all of his sins. And they encouraged each other to avoid all sin, no matter how small. But with all of this evidence that I've just given you, I know there are still people out there who will think, well, there's this tiny sin that really is not going to hurt anybody. I'm still going to do it. So listen to this. I recently went to a talk at my parish by Dr. Marcellino D'Ambrosio. His name is a little hard for some people to pronounce, so sometimes he goes by Dr. Italy, and he's been on Catholic radio, and you know, he travels and is a Catholic speaker. And he told the best story. When he was in the seminary, he didn't become a priest, he ended up being called to marriage, but when he was in the seminary, him and his fellow seminarian, they almost committed the tiniest of sins. And they thought, well, okay, let's do the right thing. And the most beautiful thing came out of it. And had they done that tiny sin, you know, nothing major would have happened, but they would have missed out on something beautiful. They would have missed out on what God had in store for them. And it was such a good story, and I really want to tell you, but because I know he's still traveling and speaking, I don't want to ruin the talk for you if you ever listen to him. So I'll just give an example, but his story is so good, I wish I could just tell it, but I don't feel that it's my story to tell. Okay, here's an example. Say you're golfing at a fancy golf course and all the VIP members are eating this super fancy catered meal, and you're not a VIP member, and you know, nobody is like checking anybody in. It's just out in the open, outside on the golf course. And you and your friend are tempted to go over and get a plate of this food, and you know, no one will know, no one will be harmed by you committing this tiny sin of taking something that's not yours. Right? That's an example of such a tiny sin. Like most people I know would be like, yeah, just take the food. But it would be much better for you to not just take the food anonymously and to ask the coordinator of the event, hey, we're golfers here, we're not, you know, part of this VIP membership, but it seems you have a lot of extra food, do you mind if we take a plate? And, you know, there is a chance that they might say, I'm sorry, this is only for these members, but what if God has something beautiful in store for you? What if that coordinator says, oh yes, please, what's your name? And you develop a relationship and they say, oh, we actually need some golfers for this program. We want to test out these new products. We also want you to test out some other courses with these products, these courses that you might not be able to get into otherwise. Golfing is very expensive. I don't golf. and you develop this beautiful relationship, family, friends, and maybe even bring someone in their family to the church. Who knows? And this beautiful relationship with this person never would have come about if you didn't approach them and ask. If you just took the food without asking, nothing terrible would have happened, but you would have missed out on this beautiful relationship that God had in store for you. Another example, I recently watched Heather's video from A Catholic Mom's Life on NFP and how NFP could be a sin if you're never open to life, or if you're not open to life for a reason that isn't that strong. There are strong reasons to abstain and to not be open to life, which would be a serious medical or financial situation. But Heather shared that her and her husband were abstaining. They were not open to life because she didn't want to be pregnant for her sibling's wedding. And she shared in the video that that wasn't a good reason, and she didn't know her body that well at that time, and she ended up becoming pregnant. And wow, God had something beautiful in store for her, because she had her daughter, who is the most beautiful little girl, and she was so excited to have a girl. I mean, she loves her boys, but when you're a girl's girl, you kind of dream of having a daughter. And if you watch her videos, her daughter's smile is so big. She's just such a precious little girl. So wow, if she knew her body better and, did not get pregnant and had her wish of not being pregnant for that wedding, she wouldn't have Bella today. So those are two examples of the tiniest of sins that you think don't really affect anyone, but they do affect God, and we do not know what beautiful things God has in store for us if we just follow God's laws. Again, Dr. Italy's story was so good. If you're the type of person to read the last few pages of a book before you read a whole book, like you don't care about spoilers, you can email me at everydaycatholicchannel@gmail.com, and I'll email you Dr. Italy's story because it's so good. But again, I don't want to tell it on here. I don't feel that it's my story to tell because he is a Catholic speaker, and if you show up at one of his talks, I don't want you to already know the story from my channel. But he had a really great story that showed that, wow, we don't know what God has in store for us. So I hope this video encouraged you to follow God's law, even when it's hard, or even when it seems like it doesn't matter. Like this little sin is not going to affect anybody, but it affects God, and we don't know what God has in store for us. So I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you're having a lovely day during this beautiful Easter season, and until next time, bye.